Isn't that right? There's Micah right before Nahum, actually, and Zephaniah right after Haggai. If you can, not but three short chapters. Well, three chapters in the book of Habakkuk. But this was suggested, a good suggestion that we look at this book, and it's actually got a little part in it that's been very meaningful to me because it's kind of. And we'll talk about why in a little bit, maybe if not tonight. I know we'll get to it next Wednesday night. But I want to talk a little bit, obviously, about the setting of the book of Habakkuk. And I want to talk about some of the issues that are discussed in the book of Habakkuk. And then we'll get into the study of it and see what we understand or can find out. Habakkuk is a prophet of God. And we don't know anything else. We don't hear about him really anywhere else in the Bible except in this short book that bears his name. Now, there is a New Testament verse that is quoted by the Apostle Paul that comes from the book of Habakkuk. And that's going to be quite substantial because we're going to talk about that as part of it, because it's a part of the big answers to the questions that are answered in the book of Habakkuk. Habakkuk was a prophet for the southern kingdom, that is Judah, and he is a prophet at just only within the last 20 years or so before the Babylonian captivity is going to happen. So we've talked about this, I know, in our study of the Kings and some other, we're looking at it a little bit. Habakkuk, I'm sure, will be one of our Sunday school lessons, but I looked it up, and I forget which chapter it is, but it's not anything like a look at the whole book.
Micah's Sunday.
Right.
I think it's 3 weeks, 3 or 4 weeks maybe.
Yeah, Habakkuk is going to be in there, but it's just going to look at one certain part of the book of Habakkuk. So Habakkuk, we talked about it some in our Sunday school lesson. I know when I filled in for Jay week before last, talked about the Assyrians coming into Israel, the northern kingdom, and said we know from history that was in 722 BC, 722 years before Jesus. The Assyrians came in and conquered, took over the northern kingdom, or Israel. And remember, that's the biggest part. That's a lot of the land and more of the people. It's not where Jerusalem is, though. Jerusalem is in Judah. And Judah is the southern kingdom. And the southern kingdom is where all the kings after the first three kings, right, ruled over the entire nation. Who were those first three kings over Israel? You know.
Saul, David, Solomon.
Right. Saul, David, and Solomon. And they reigned over all of the Israelite people. But then, if you remember the story of Rehoboam, that's Solomon's son, and he listened to the advice that his own contemporaries, the young men, gave him. And Solomon had really done a lot of taxing. Solomon built the temple. Solomon built a palace. And see, all that took a lot. And if you remember, I don't want to get too deep into this, but if you remember when Samuel talked to God about the people wanting a king, God told Samuel, first of all, Samuel, don't feel bad. It's not you they're rejecting me, God said. But God had Samuel tell those people what was going to happen if you got a king. And one of the big things that he told him is he's going to take your sons and your daughters, and he's going to take your money, some of your valuables. And that's exactly what happened. When Solomon was doing all that work in Israel, where did he get his labor force? Well, he drafted them, Kenny. Yeah, and he said, yeah, you got some 18 to 20-year-old sons, you're going to come work for the government for a few years because we've got a lot of things to build. And we got to have your money, so you got to bring money into the treasury so we can do all this work. So when you get leadership, you know, it's going to be April the 15th before too awful long. Actually, March 1st for us farmers, if we don't file quarterly. And you know what? We're going to pay our part too, aren't we? Yeah, we're going to pay our part. So but anyway, I probably shouldn't have gone into that much. But what we've got now is a divided kingdom at the time that Rehoboam, the son of Solomon, he makes some mistakes. The northern kingdom separates. They have a king by the name of Jeroboam. He establishes 2 new places of worship in the northern part of the territory where the nation of Israel is. He doesn't want the people coming back to God, coming back to Jerusalem, and perhaps getting back in with the people of the southern kingdom. So we got the split. And from then on, I think somebody asked, was there ever a good king in the northern kingdom in Israel? No, there was not. There was never one that the Lord praised as being good. All of them led the people away deeper and deeper into idolatry. In the southern kingdom, we had good kings and we had bad kings. Actually, this is close. Josiah has been a king, maybe a little before Habakkuk. And Josiah, who was one of the boy kings, he became a king, I think, when he was either 7 or 9 years old. But they had another wise man in the land that advised him and helped him till he got to be an adult. But Josiah had done a lot of reforming in the land. And he had gotten rid of some of the idols and places that they worshiped. So things had gotten better in Judah, but it wasn't long. That was only temporary. It wasn't long before the people were more and more guilty of exactly what the northern kingdom had done. And basically, it's idolatry. And it's accepting other gods other than the God of heaven. Not that they forgot the God of heaven. They would continue to worship Him, but they also worship the gods of these foreigners as well. So God is decreeing in the book of Habakkuk what He's going to do to Judah. And we'll see that in the first chapter tonight. He's going to have them taken captive. The difference, what is the difference in what happens to Judah and what happened to Israel? The big difference.
Judah comes back.
Judah comes back. Judah, there's prophecy in the book of Isaiah about Cyrus the king letting the people go back. It talks about a 70-year period. So, and even though everybody didn't go into captivity at one time and everybody didn't come back, there is this 70-year period in there from people going into Babylonian captivity and people coming back to establish the nation of Judah again. But anyway, that's the big difference. Now in Habakkuk is living, the northern kingdom's gone. They've been gone for about 100 years, okay? The Assyrians came in and took them over and took a lot of the people away, and they'll never be a nation again. They're not coming back. Why has that not happened to Judah? Even if you don't know the answer, you ought to be able to figure it out. Why isn't Judah the same place Israel is? Because who's kept it from happening? Yes. You gonna? Yeah, it was God. God has protected Judah to some extent. But now, as the years go by, even though perhaps a good king leads the people back closer to God, as soon as he's gone, they're right back into what they were doing before. And they're becoming more and more like the northern kingdom, like Israel was. And so God has determined that He's going to punish Judah for that. And so Habakkuk is going to be addressing that. Now then, so things are not good in Judah. There's a lot of injustice. Poor people, the weak are not being treated right. People are taking advantage of each other. There's a lot of dishonesty. There's a lot of crime being committed. And the leaders, even of the land, are known for taking advantage of those who are disadvantaged. Okay? They are taking advantage of those who should be helped and not abused, but they are abusing them. And Habakkuk, the prophet, is watching this. He sees this. And so as we begin this book, Habakkuk has something that he wants to talk to God about. And that's what he wants to talk to God about is, Lord, and we'll read this in just a minute, basically in my words, he says, Lord, where are you and what are you doing? Can you see the way people are living and what they're doing and how they're acting? Why aren't you doing something about it? That's Habakkuk's question to God. You got to do something about this. God's answer is going to be, well, I'm going to do something about it. And you wouldn't believe it if you were told. And Habakkuk is going to get told by God what he's going to do. And when Habakkuk hears that, he can't believe that God would do such a thing. And we'll talk about why. But here's what I want us to think about maybe before we even get into the book of Habakkuk. Is it applicable today? What kind of world we live in? Miss Anita says a mess. I don't doubt, I know that, you know, that the world has always been a world where sin was present. And there have always been bad people doing bad things. But we're not young folks in here. We're not young folks. Youngest person in this audience is almost 60. And I think it would be unanimous. Do you think, what would you say about the morality of the people in Western Kentucky compared to when you were young?
No comparison.
Is it worse or better?
Oh, it's much worse.
It's much worse.
But it wasn't as totally clear as it is now.
That's true. People didn't know everything going on then, did they?
We know everything everybody does.
Yeah, it's different. Kenny?
We have all of our leaders. You don't have any godly people in Washington that's making the decisions. I mean, if you did, they would make better decisions than what they do.
Right.
And, till we get people that elected officials that are godly people and people that, we're gonna be in this from now on.
Right.
Now, that's just the situation.
Yeah, and I don't know if there may be some good people in Washington, probably good people in Frankfort, but I think most of us know that a lot of them aren't either. They got totally different ideas than I think we would. And what they might present as good and right to do, you and I would say, no, that's wrong. And we would believe that, we would believe what we said because we would be basing it on the way we understand the Bible and what God teaches. I think there's always been bad people and there's always been bad things happen. And as the point was made, Deborah made, there was a time when it probably wasn't known as much as what went on. But most of us would say that our nation morally has digressed, gone. That doesn't mean everybody. And we know that there are a lot of good people in our country. But we know, we would feel, I think, like it has digressed.
You know, she's right. I didn't know things about John F. Kennedy that's come out in the last few years.
Right. Well,
About all his women and everything, you know.
right. Well, there was a time when the media would have protected information like that even. And nowadays, of course, they're always looking for the any kind of story. It seems like that. What about in the world? You know, and I'm certainly not. I don't know how to speak to this in the world, but how many people in the world live in countries where religion or a belief in God may not be outlawed, but it's certainly not something that's promoted either. In the countries that are like socialist and communist, is God a big part of those nations? No, there's not. And we know, I think we see some of the effects of that. There's lots of alcohol consumed in the United States of America, but I've been told for a long time that in Russia, alcoholism is a terrible, terrible problem. There's a lot of people who have no belief in God. And if you take God out of your life, what have you got? That's the most important thing to us, isn't it? If you take that away, all of a sudden life, I don't know, it loses a lot of its appeal, doesn't it? We believe that God is gonna be with us and bless us and protect us even to some degree. And we know that we're not immune to troubles and problems and all. But where do we get the strength to endure those things? Not from a liquor bottle. No, but we can get that from our faith in God. And so, to me, these stories are applicable in our lives because people have always lived, and I would even argue maybe it's worse now than it once went. People have always lived around other people who were maybe sometimes not very good people. Some very good, but some not so good. Not only about good and bad, but do bad things ever happen to any of y'all? You ever had anything bad happen to you? We all have, hadn't we? We've got to deal with that. That's one of the questions we talked about in the book of Job. Habakkuk's going to deal with it a little bit too. So when bad things happen, what's a normal... If we are God-fearing people, we're Christians, what's kind of one of those things that might come to our minds sometimes? Lord, where are you? I need help. Why is this happening to me? Why are my neighbors getting arrested for drugs? Why is our neighborhood not the kind of neighborhood it used to be? We begin to ask those kinds of questions, not counting all the other difficult, challenging things that we face in our lives. I think this book is going to address those kinds of things, some of that kind of thing as well, because Habakkuk is upset and he does not understand what God is doing, what God is allowing. I think sometimes we feel that way. And you know, we may find ourselves incorrect in what we think. I think Habakkuk's going to find out that he's not God. Habakkuk's going to discover that. But you know that we're people and we have weaknesses and we don't understand everything. And I don't think God would expect us not to ever question Him or to ask a question. Why? Why? Lord, I need some help. Why is it this way? And Habakkuk, at least in this story, Habakkuk's going to not be the same person at the end of the book that he is at the start. And we'll see why. We'll see what changed his mind and what makes him feel different than he did at the start of it. Okay. Let's look at the first chapter and let's get started a little bit. I've got ESV, you know. The first 4 verses are Habakkuk the prophet talking. It's the oracle that Habakkuk the prophet saw. O Lord, how long shall I cry for help and you will not hear? All right, already. What's going on with Habakkuk? He's been calling out to God for help. Has he gotten any help? He doesn't think so. How long, Lord, have I got to keep asking you? You know, how long have I got to do that? You haven't done anything. Or cry to you violence, and you will not save. Okay, based upon what I've already just told you, what do you think Habakkuk means when he says to the Lord, violence? Where is Habakkuk seeing violence? In the land, among the people. He's saying, there's violence going on out there. The way that people are living, it's bad, Lord. Why do you make me see iniquity? And why do you idly look at wrong? If you look at something idly, how do you look at it? You just look at it and you don't do anything about it. You just, well, there it is. I see it. But you don't do anything about it. So what is Habakkuk saying? Lord, look at your people. Destruction and violence are before me. Strife and contention arise. So the law is paralyzed. Now they've got a law. And he's talking there about the law of Moses that these people would live by. The law is paralyzed and justice never goes forth. Why? Because the people that are supposed to give justice are crooked. And the wicked surround the righteous, so justice goes forth perverted. It's like there's crooked judges. The sheriff's crooked. The bootleggers are all paying him off and they're selling their liquor all over the place and they're not getting in trouble for it. And the judges that take bribes and the innocent person doesn't have a good chance of getting justice because he may be poor and he can't pay off the judges. And Lord, Habakkuk says, you're watching all this take place and you're not doing anything about it. And what would you assume? How does Habakkuk feel? What would Habakkuk I wonder if Habakkuk might say, I guess it might have thought, God, if I was you, I'd be making them people sorry for what they're doing. I'd be doing something about this. Why aren't you? Okay, that's how the book starts out. Habakkuk asking God, Lord, I don't understand. What are you doing? I know you got to see what's going on down here. My neighbors, the people who are in control in this land, they're crooked, they're evil, Justice is perverted. There is no justice really. And you're not doing anything about it. Why not? Why not? All right, we're going to relate this to ourselves again. When do we begin to, I don't know if we think like Habakkuk, but when might we get a little bit frustrated with God? When things are going good? No. Sometimes things don't go so well in our lives. We might be getting frustrated. We might be getting angry. And we might say, Lord, I don't think this is the way it's supposed to be. Why is it this way? And why have you let this happen? And why don't you do something to change it? Well, let's read beginning in verse 5. The Lord gives His answer, and it goes through verse 11. This is the Lord talking. Look among the nations and see, wonder and be astounded. For I am doing a work in your days that you would not believe if told. So, God's first reply to Habakkuk is, okay, Habakkuk, I'm going to tell you what I'm going to do about it, but when I tell you, you're not going to believe it. For behold, I am raising up the Chaldeans. That's the Babylonians. That's another name. They go by Chaldean, they go by Babylonian. Now, the next says, that bitter and hasty nation who marched through the breadth of the earth to seize dwellings not their own. And then he begins to describe them. If you were in Sunday school, Jay's Sunday school class Sunday morning, Jay asked a question, something about what kind of people were the Assyrians, and David Driver answered back there. Remember what David said? Crooked, awful people, slaughtering, taking their swords and slashing pregnant women's bellies open. Barbaric warfare. Just unmercilessly killing people, slaughtering people. The Assyrians became the great empire that ruled the world. Well, what about the Assyrians now? Well, here's what's happening. Right, even as Habakkuk is talking to God, here's what's happening in the world. The Babylonians are becoming really strong, and they're getting stronger and more powerful than the Assyrians are. And they're about to take over. They're going to conquer the Assyrians, and they are going to become the empire that rules the world. Now then, I'm going to go back a little bit because you maybe will remember this story. Do you remember in the book of Daniel when the king Saul had a vision and he saw that great statue? Do you remember that big tall, and it was made out of different kinds of metal until it was iron and clay at the bottom? The Assyrians were the first, were at the top. The Babylonians were represented by the next part. Later on, it's going to be the Greek Empire, and eventually will be the Roman Empire. Those are the four empires that are going to rule the world from the Bible times that we're studying here. The Assyrians are the first great empire in the world. I guess I said the Greeks. It was Alexander, was he a Greek? I thought so. He was maybe the most famous conqueror of that empire. But anyway, so here we find God says, you're not going to believe me, Habakkuk, when I tell you, but I'm going to raise up the Chaldeans. And he begins to talk about them. Look in verse 7. They are dreaded and fearsome. Their justice and dignity go forth from themselves. In other words, they take justice into their own hands. Their dignity is not. They don't have much dignity at all or much justice either. They just do whatever they want to. Their horses are swifter than leopards. It's kind of symbolic of how great a military army they're going to have. More fierce than the evening wolves. Their horsemen press proudly on. Their horsemen come from afar. They fly like an eagle, swift to devour. They all come for violence, all their faces forward. They gather captives like sand. At kings they scoff, and at rulers they laugh. They laugh at every fortress. And I think this next line probably can be taken literally. For they pile up earth and take it. What did the people do in that time? The fortified cities had what around them? A moat, possibly. But what else? They had a wall. They built remember Jericho? When the Israelites first came into the Canaanite land, Jericho had a wall all the way around it. Later, Jerusalem was built with a wall. Well, how did the foreigners sometimes get over the wall? They heaped up dirt. They built them. They built them a ramp so that they could get to the top of the wall and get in. That's what this statement's talking about, and they know in history that was actually practiced some. Now, how they did it, I don't know. But they pile up earth, and they take that city. It's called a fortress here. Then they sweep by like the wind and go on. Guilty men whose own might is their God. It's like the tornado that came through. Here they come. And here it comes, and it's wow. It just started a little while ago, and now then it's gone on, and you look and you see what's left, and it's nothing but a mess. And that's the way God is describing the Babylonian, the Chaldean army, as they come into a city and they take it. What do? Well, they either kill you, or they take you prisoner and send you back to somewhere else. Or if you're real poor, or if you're real old, or if you're crippled and you're not worth much anything, they just let you stay there. You'll be poor the rest of you. You'll never have anything because there's nothing else there because they destroy it. You know the story of Nehemiah when he comes back to Jerusalem. What kind of shape is the city of Jerusalem in? It's rubbish. Remember, there's no wall anymore. It's all been torn down. Where's the temple? Yeah, it's gone. It's been destroyed. It's not there anymore. The Babylonians did that. Yes, they came through and they destroyed it. So as God is describing what the Babylonians are going to do, He's telling what kind of people they are. I don't know who had the worst reputation. I don't know if the Assyrians were worse than the Babylonians or the Babylonians were worse than the Assyrians, but neither one of them were very nice. And if they came to your city and you were the foreigner and they wanted it and they took it, it's not going to be good for you ever again, most likely. Okay. So, Habakkuk has a complaint with God. Lord, why are you excusing or not looking at all this sin and doing something about it? And God's answer is, oh, I see it, and I am going to do something about it. You won't believe it, but I'm going to use the Babylonians to punish my people Judah. I'm going to use the Babylonians. Now, if you haven't read the next part or you don't know what's coming, in your mind, what do you think about that?
Habakkuk basically said, wait a minute. I wanted these people punished. I don't want worse people here. You know, punish who's bad here, but don't bring worse people here.
Right, exactly. I mean, I wish I could think of a modern day story. I don't know. Hey, can you imagine? All right, you're in the 6th grade. You're in the 6th grade, and there's a bully in the class. And I mean, everybody's scared to death of him. I'm kind of basing this on a story I have from the 2nd grade, because I came around the building, the old ag shop at Farmington one day, and there was a boy. Some of y'all would know who he was. There was a boy standing. Us kids kind of had this little route that we were all running and having this chase game. Well, he was standing right in the middle of the path, just like this, Kenny. And you know what he's doing? He's catching all the little boys as they came by and throwing them down to the ground. And I was scared to death of him. If you think I run through there, you're crazy. I turned around and went the other way. I was scared to death of him. You know, but he was being a bully. But it's kind of like the story is, you get in trouble with the teacher, and you think, oh, she says, young man, stand. You can't behave that way. I'm fixing to punish you. And she points back there at the bully that's always getting out of line and says, go over there and give Stan a good one for doing what he just did. And what would you think, Kenny? Now, wait a minute. Stan's not near as bad as he is, but you're using him to punish. You know, and that. Yeah, that obviously probably wouldn't. That wouldn't go over. That'd get you fired, wouldn't it? Well, you might get fired if you did anything.
That reminds me of a story that has nothing to do with the Bible, but it's like you're saying. There was this, and this is a mythical story, it's not true.
Okay.
There was this town that was getting overrun by pigeons. People hated pigeons, and they said, we got to get rid of the pigeons. They brought in this this certain lizard that ate pigeons. Well, then there's lizards everywhere. And they said, what are we going to do about the lizards? They said, well, we're bringing in these monkeys that eat the lizards. Now there's apes around everywhere. And they told the mayor, what are we going to do? He said, well, he said we got grizzly bears lined up to come in. So every time it was just a little worse, but it made a bigger problem.
That's right.
Yeah.
Right. Well, as we begin to read further in the chapter, Habakkuk's got a real problem with God again. Because what God has told him doesn't go with the way Habakkuk, in his own reasoning, thinks it ought to be. He thinks God ought to do something about it, but he doesn't think what God's chosen is right. And we'll read, are you not from everlasting, O Lord my God, my Holy One? We shall not die. And that I've wondered, what's that statement doing? Because there would be people in Judah who would die when the Babylonians came through. But the verse that my Bible referred me to is a verse that talks about God promised Judah that he wouldn't destroy them like he did Israel. And I think that may be what Habakkuk is saying. What did God do to Israel because of their sin? He took away their place among the nations, and they would never have it again. They would disappear. God's not going to do that with Judah. He's already promised. And I think you know this. Why will God keep his promise? Why does God promise Judah that he won't destroy them? Because God's going to use Judah for something. What is it? You know.
To bring Jesus into the world.
exactly. That's how Jesus is coming into the world, through these people. And He's not going to destroy them. This is David. This is the people that David was the king. And remember, David's going to, or a descendant of David is going to sit on the throne forever in succession. God's keeping His word, and He's still keeping it today. Because Jesus is a descendant of David. And a descendant of David is still sitting on the throne over God's people today. God's keeping His word. He's not going to destroy. All of Judah's not going to die. They're not going to be taken away. O Lord, you have ordained them as a judgment. He's talking about the Babylonians. Lord, you've made them to be the ones who are going to bring judgment. And you, O rock, have established them for reproof. You've established them as a great, powerful nation so that they'll come reprove your people. Correct them. You who are of purer eyes than to see evil and cannot look at wrong, why do you idly look at traitors and remain silent when the wicked swallows up the man more righteous than he? What's Habakkuk saying? What Jay said a while ago. Lord, how can this be right? How can you do this? Because yes, Judah is sinning and Judah needs to be punished, but Lord, the Chaldeans are a lot worse than Judah. How can you do it this way? It doesn't seem right to me that you would do that. Now, I don't know if Habakkuk had a plan in mind or not. And maybe we'll just end with that verse, but I have one more question to ask you. I wonder sometimes if in our own thinking, in our own lives and what we see going on in the world sometimes, I believe that we probably still do kind of like Habakkuk sometimes. We don't understand God and we think that there's something wrong. I don't know. I wasn't alive during this time. But you know what? If there was a man in the world today that came into power like Adolf Hitler, if Hitler was in Germany right now doing what he did in the 1930s, what might we Christians in Farmington be thinking about that? You know, we might say, Lord, what in the world's going on over there in Germany? Are you going to let that crazy man come into power? Are you going to let him do all that to all those Jewish people? Are you going to let him convince people all over the world that they are part of a superior race and everybody else is inferior to them? And how powerful did Hitler get? I tell you what, if it hadn't been for the United States, which maybe that's God did that. But he's taken over Europe pretty easy, wasn't he? And looks like he had England and France both pretty much in submission when we got a part of it. But what I'm saying is we don't understand God's ways either, do we? And sometimes we ask questions. God, how could you allow something like this? Why is it that this is happening? And I'm not so sure that's such an unusual thing. But here's how we're going to end tonight. Habakkuk asks a good question, and he's really concerned. He finds himself at odds with the Lord. But something's going to happen before this story's over, and Habakkuk's kind of going to go somewhere else. And I think that may be something that's going to interest us as well. When he does, we'll see what he does. We'll see something else that's brought up in the book of Habakkuk. And we'll see how perhaps it helped Habakkuk begin to understand some things that he didn't understand before. maybe we'll